you've got three issues specifically on your website, and it's the public safety one, the kind of fiscal responsibility one, and then you've got one about education and choice.
Mhm.
So for I don't know, do you care which one we start with?
No.
All right, we'll go fiscal responsibility. So, what are your thoughts on fiscal responsibility? What can you like sort of frame the problem in the way that you see it now, and then what do you want to do about it?
So these, I perceive that these next few questions are going to be very much directed towards platform stuff, and I'm going to answer them as best as I can. But I also,
Sure.
please, for your audience, recognize that I am in a closed primary, and anything that I do say now, not necessarily is well, how do I say this? Anything I do say now is stuff that I've vetted and I've gone through and I understand, but I'm still learning every single day, and I'm still learning issues because, again, I'm door knocking on the regular. I mean, I came, this is my volunteer circuit. I came from door knocking, earlier. So recognize that a lot of the issues are still being finalized, and we will have a full relaunch of our website come June 22nd after the primary, which will have in detail policy issues and policy plans that we want to work on. But until then, I don't necessarily need to give ammunition to any of my opponents, just so we're clear.
Sure, fair enough.
But in terms of fiscal responsibility, I'm going to go real philosophical with this one. Just asking you, are you someone that will want your taxes to be raised and not have a say if your taxes are being raised?
No, I don't like paying taxes generally. Well,
that is something that, especially my opponent, because I have to focus kind of in my lane again, on my opponent, Alyssa Silverman. That's something that she voted to raise taxes in Washington, D.C. without a hearing to have the public say, well, actually, no, I kind of like what my taxes are. So that's kind of where I'm coming from when I talk about fiscal responsibility is why are you taxing people when we have a surplus budget in Washington, D.C.? We have, to put things in perspective, D.C. just got issued a $19.6 billion budget. And New York City, for example, which is a large city, has like a $99 billion budget. DC's 19.6. LA has a $12 billion city budget. So we have so much money in DC that's being allocated, kind of, in my opinion, inappropriately to fund programs that have either not worked, have been proven to not work in various other cities, or are completely just nonsensical that I'm trying to provide some semblance of common sense to the way the budget's being allocated. Having that being said, the other major issue is when affordable housing or when housing is being built in various locations across the city, it's raising taxes for the housing taxes for the residents who live there, who may have already paid off their house, and now their taxes are becoming more than what their mortgage was. So to me, I think that we need to put money back into the voters. We need to put money back into the public, into their pockets. And we need to have some semblance of a safety net for the people who can utilize the proper funding and with programs that work. So that's fiscal responsibility in my mind. I also think that, well, yeah, that's all I'll say about that for right this second.
No worries. You had public safety on there. So I know a lot of people were talking about defunding the police, etc. The last couple of years. Crime rates have gone up in cities generally across the U.S. the last couple of years. Yeah, thoughts. I like what. So again, if you want to frame the problem a bit, I know that kind of framed it a bit for you, but you want to frame the problem and then kind of what are your ideas? And I know that again, we're not going to flesh out full policy positions here, but just general thoughts on the subject.
So DC is kind of an interesting case study because we have federal property where, I mean, we have tons of protests on federal land. So obviously, like, for example, one of the most recent things was what happened with the Supreme Court leak. And what happens when we have these massive protests, it takes away our already dwindling police force and makes them pay attention to what's going on with the protest. For a long time, it's been kind of understood that DC needs a 4,000 police force, or 4,000 officers in a police force. And right now we're hovering around 350. Now, what that's caused, it's one, caused crime rate to skyrocket. Two, response time is, I think, around 90 seconds. So if you're being attacked, mugged, raped, you need the police officer for any reason, you have to wait an additional 90 seconds on average for that police officer to show up to your door, which I think is, again, problematic. I mean, we could certainly reduce that number, but that comes with incentivizing police to stay in the force. So what's kind of been happening is there has been initiatives and there has been funding, because, while my opponent, for example, is a defund the police progressive, the mayor, on the other hand, is pro-police. I mean, there are plenty of people on the council that recognize we need a police force. And so what's happened is through legislation, we have basically enacted policy that cripples what the police can and can't do. They no longer have due process. They can't do anything. Well, it's catch and release with juveniles. And they're restricted in a lot of ways with other sort of off the beat kind of crimes that they can do. For example, like one of them is a big nuisance in the city. There are people that ride ATVs around or ride their dirt bikes around, causing just noise violations and it's just havoc across town, and the police can't pursue them. They can't do anything about that. That was one of the so that's how policy affects it. And what, you have to look at this from a holistic viewpoint. What that's done is it's made police who are either retiring to say, you know what, I could put maybe 5-10 more years in. I'm already at my retirement age. I'm just going to get out. So they're leaving. And then police who have been disrespected because of the whole defund the police movement are saying, you know what, I could go somewhere else and have a better time, not be dealing with this BS. I'm leaving. So every single year we're losing about 350 police officers, or 350 police officers, but we're only gaining a net of like 20 police officers. So if we're losing 350, we're only gaining 370. And how are we supposed to get to the 4,000 number if people are, or if the police specifically are so disenfranchised to actually be able to do their job, to actually do what police. And not to mention, and I'll tie this into education as well, but the council had recently voted for all of the SCOs, which are the police officers who are in school, the various DC public schools. They voted for those police officers to transition out of the office and basically have a security guard in place. And this has become a huge issue, especially in light of what's maybe happened in Texas and what have you. I think there was a stabbing in Alexandria, for example. But what this has done is now we don't have that link to the communities through the school with the Metropolitan Police Force. So it's furthering the divide between the community and children and the Metropolitan Police. And so my thought is, one, I'd like to change that policy. And I want to build a rapport between the police force in our communities, and be an advocate on the council to make sure that police lives aren't being affected negatively based off the legislation that's being passed. And this also encompasses, again, fiscal responsibility, because many of our, again, everything's kind of holistic, so it's tough to say just one thing. But many of our police, our teachers, our workers can't find affordable housing, so they're having to live not where they're working. They're having to live in suburbs or what have you. And that's affecting, again, their morale, because if you're the police officer in your neighborhood, who lives in your neighborhood and patrols in your neighborhood, that builds that rapport with your neighborhood. In the same way, a small business who is not affected by heavy tax policies is able to uplift the neighborhood by just being the local mom and pop shop for whatever reason. And so, a lot of that's why those are kind of my three lanes I'm sticking to, because you saw how each lane is encompassing something else. I mean, it's very much a holistic approach. One thing does affect the other. So by putting the police in a precarious situation by passing legislation to restrict them from doing their job means that we don't have safe neighborhoods, means that people are enticed to live in those neighborhoods, and they're going to move. Again, I think I started the podcast, or maybe just the conversation I was having with you, but in 2021, DC had one of the largest migrations out of the city compared to every other city in the country, I think we lost like 3% of our population in 1 year, which is astronomical.
Yeah.
And so my thought is, again, with affordable housing and with making sure we have a strong police force and a strong education system, is those are things that incentivize people to come live in Washington, D.C., stay in Washington, D.C., gain generational wealth in Washington, D.C., and so forth. I mean, DC should be, and this is coming from a native Washingtonian, DC should be a place where you belong as a citizen of the United States.
Yeah, fair enough. I have two clarification questions. The first one is the 90-second response time. Is that like additional onto another response time, or is that just response time period? Because I've never lived in a city, so for me that seems very fast.
So that's in DC. So
is that but before, was it like 60 or whatever? Out where I live, if a cop was at my door in 90 seconds, I'd be like, damn, that was fast. So I guess that's just
that's a point. I mean, DC is a little bit more of a smaller jurisdiction. That's an answer I would actually have to find out. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a curiosity question. I've also not, I don't really deal with the police that much because I try to not, do illegal things. But okay. And then the other question is that 4,000 number. Where does that number come from? Is that like a study that was done some time ago, or like
this number has been in the conversation well before myself. This is a number that comes from the mayor's office. This is a number that comes from council members prior to my even thought of running. This isn't a number that I'm just pulling out of thin air. It's a number that has been addressed for quite some time.
Sure.
Do I know the time limit? I don't necessarily know the time limit. I would have to go back to the books on that one, but it's been, for all intents and purposes, it's been the number that people are seeking in Washington, D.C.
Fair enough. And last one, this might be holding your feet to the fire a little bit more, but to have a strong education system and strong police force to increase those things would require revenue. So I don't know how the budget is allocated now, but most of the time when people hear, okay, well, we're going to do more of this or more government spending, that usually means the taxes will go up. But as we've discussed, we don't like that. And so what's is there thoughts on that generally?
Yeah, absolutely. Washington, D.C., at least to my understanding, we have a surplus of revenue, and we've done a good job of having kind of this surplus of revenue, especially dating back from when we were bankrupt in the 1970s. The problem is, with this surplus of revenue, we have elected to spend it on things that are a little bit more frivolous, as opposed to saying, oh, well, we have the surplus of revenue for the rainy day fund. Why don't we just keep it in our savings and lower taxes? So money has already been allocated to the various programs that it's going to be spent on. So yeah, I don't know, that clarifies your question a little bit, but the money has already been allocated, but it's just we continue to increase the way we spend. Instead of saying, oh, we're good now, we continue to increase. And that's what's driving people out, saying, you know what, this isn't worth it anymore, because the money that's being spent clearly doesn't have a return on investment, because we have the highest crime rate in 20 years. We have like the 37th best educational system out of 50 states. And I can get a better job elsewhere because there's no economic development, because half of downtown's closed down. So like that's kind of what and again, it's very holistic, but that's what I'm kind of referring to, is when you don't have the return on investment, how are you being fiscally responsible with the programs that you are funding? Because people can recognize that it's not giving you any money, or it's not giving you what you paid for,
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. Like there's stuff in Fairfax I can point to where the taxes are going, like the parks that are here, the turf soccer fields and stuff. Like there's stuff to point to where it's like, yeah, that's fine. I'll pay for that, and it's like that's fine. Yeah, fair enough. And then the last one on there, you touched on it a bit already, but education. But I think specifically on your website, you mentioned choice in education. So you kind of walk through that one for us as well.
So that's kind of a big issue in Washington, D.C. is school choice, or the opportunity for a parent to choose where they send their child. And I think this is a very much a principle ordeal. I think that it's one of those deals where if I was a parent and I wanted to send my child to the best opportunity at a school where they will succeed and move on to greener pastures, I would like to have that choice. And I would like for that choice to also be funded adequately. So the big issue, I think, is the DC public schools and the DC charter schools, public charter schools. We want to make sure that the allocation of funds is fair across the two. So that's, I mean, it's very much you either are for school choice, or for only sending your kids to the neighborhood school, and that's that. And I think the school choice, as kind of a capitalist, or as a person that appreciates good competition, school choice, I think, is the better way to go, especially if you're trying to seek out the best output for your child.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, I won't put you on the spot anymore. We got your 3 policy positions on the website. We walked through those. It's getting a bit late. So in summary, if you had to wrap it all up, and to anyone listening in DC, why should they vote for you?
Simply put, they should vote for me if they want to see change on the council, and specifically a positive change. Again, I'm running to bring checks and balances and to tilt the needle just closer to the center mark. It's not going to change overnight. I really, what I explain to a lot of people is, or when I'm knocking on doors, is I can't interfere with policy being issued by the Democrats on the council, but what I can do is make that policy better and fit more, check more boxes and make it stronger policy. And so a vote for me would make better policy because of the checks and balances. And I think a vote for me would also bring transparency, accountability, and responsibility, because these are values that I have through the leadership that I have as an officer in the Navy.
Fair enough. Good answer. Where can the people find you?
I am on all social media at, well, I guess it's at Niosi 2022. I'm most active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but I do have a YouTube page. I am really looking for volunteers who have similar values, who want to come out and meet me and door knock, and there's so many different volunteer opportunities in the campaign. So anybody really can come, and I try to keep an open door policy, so I have my number and my email on my website. If you want to reach out to me, just have a chat, which I highly encourage. And my website is NIOSI or Niosi2022.com. And again, the website is going to be relaunched on close to the end of the primary. So I'm very excited about that. So what you see now will probably be different in a few weeks, but Yeah, I'm just very excited. I'm very excited to have the support that I already have. I mean, one thing I hadn't mentioned earlier in the podcast is I'm the fourth Republican in decades to have raised over $100,000. And
Oof.
that's, I mean, to put it lightly, that's astronomical. I'm on the Mount Rushmore of Republicans who have ever fundraised adequately. So with that in mind, it's we're full steam ahead. I mean, every single day I'm working. You know, it's almost 10:10 right now, and this is most of the time when I'm getting off work and out of campaign mode. I mean, you know, between texting, calling, and volunteering, and just doing things, I'm busy all the time, but I love it. I'm having the most fun, honestly.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you. We'll have to do this again when we're less busy and we can not do this at 10 at night. We can talk about funny things and stuff, serious things, and all the rest of it. But we'll get all those links down in the description below, so go check that out. Like you said, all the links will be there. Shoot him a message. I'm sure he'll be happy to chat. Yeah. Any last nickels?
I'm good. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to your fan base.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, with that, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.